All right, let's jump right in. Have you ever found yourself staring at a massive, seemingly endless spreadsheet or just a really dense table of numbers and thought to yourself, this is literally just a wall of noise? Well, today we're going to change that entirely. We're putting on our detective hats to figure out how we can use raw, unyielding numbers to actually solve real-world mysteries. We'll be looking into how mathematical modeling lets us predict the future. And I mean everything from a local shop's retail profits all the way up to massive global health trends. We are going to find the hidden stories inside the data.
So, just to get our gears turning here, let me throw a practical question your way. Imagine you're managing a huge department store. How could you possibly use the weather forecast to practically guarantee a profit? I know, it sounds kind of like a trick question, right? But it's actually the entire foundation of modern retail economics. You see, successful stores don't just guess what consumers want. They map out behaviors based on specific variables. And to do that, they rely on one absolutely crucial mathematical tool.
And that tool is correlation. Simply put, correlation is a statistical relationship, or a connection, between two or more variables. It's basically how we measure if and exactly how strongly one thing affects another thing. So, does a sudden spike in temperature mean a drop in sales? Does traveling a longer distance automatically mean a longer travel time? Today, we're going to connect those dots using some really fascinating real-world data sources.
Okay, here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The global health connections. 2. Commutes and retail trends. 3. Making predictions with data. 4. Decoding growth chart percentiles. And 5. The true value of modeling.
Starting us off, Section 1, the global health connections.
For this first investigation, we've actually pulled data straight from the United Nations Statistical Database, so we can ask some really big macro-level questions. We're looking at a pretty stark comparison between two very different nations, Japan and Chad. We're specifically comparing the adult illiteracy rate against the infant mortality rate per 1,000 births. Now, check this out. In Japan, adult illiteracy is sitting at 0%, and infant mortality is incredibly low, just 3 per 1,000. But then, look over at Chad. Adult illiteracy skyrockets to 68%, and infant mortality spikes right along with it to 130 per 1,000. By looking at these two extremes, a clear correlation hypothesis forms right in front of us. As illiteracy rates rise, infant mortality rates tend to rise right along with them. It really highlights this profound link between a nation's educational infrastructure and its overall healthcare outcomes.
Let's test out that analytical muscle again. Before we look at the next set of numbers, I want you to ask yourself a question. Is there a correlation between male and female life expectancy? Basically, if women in a specific country live longer, do the men there live longer too? Go ahead and make a mental prediction right now.
Okay, let's see what the evidence actually says. Over in France, male life expectancy is 78, while female is 85. Now compare that to the Russian Federation, where male life expectancy is 60 and female is 73. So the data clearly points to a positive correlation. Even though females generally have a higher life expectancy across the board anyway, nations that have a high female life expectancy consistently see a higher male life expectancy as well. It tells us that environmental, healthcare, and economic factors are clearly lifting or lowering both of those variables together.
Moving on to Section 2, Commutes and Retail Trends.
Let's shift our focus away from those massive global demographics for a second and zoom down into everyday micro-level data. Picture the morning commute for a class of 30 students. Now, common sense tells you that the further away you live, the longer it's going to take to get to school, right? That would be a positive correlation. But what's really interesting here is the anomaly. Look at student A. They live 15 kilometers away, and it takes them 40 minutes to commute. But then you have student B, who lives 25 kilometers away, which is significantly further, yet their commute is only 31 minutes. No way, right?
Think about this for just a second. Why on earth might students living further away actually get to school quicker? Well, this is exactly where raw mathematics bumps into the messy reality of our world. Student A might live 15 kilometers deep inside a really congested city center, hitting dozens of red lights. But student B, even though they're 25 kilometers out, they might have direct access to a high-speed motorway that drops them right at the school gates. You see, data isn't just floating numbers, it is a direct reflection of physical reality.
Let's apply this exact same thinking back to that retail mystery I brought up at the very beginning. A department store decided to track their glove sales against the mean daytime temperature over the course of a year. Check this out. When it was a freezing 3 degrees Celsius, they sold 61 pairs of gloves. Makes sense. But when the temperature shot up to a sweltering 28 degrees Celsius, they sold exactly 0 pairs. This right here is the absolute perfect example of a negative correlation. As one variable, the temperature, goes up, the other variable, the sales, goes down. It is undeniable, totally actionable data for a store manager trying to plan their seasonal inventory.
Which brings us to Section 3, making predictions with data.
So, we've observed these relationships, but how do we actually turn an observation into a reliable prediction? Well, let's break down how this builds into a usable system. First, you've got to collect your data, just like the UN or that store manager did. Second, you plot a scatter diagram, placing all those little data points onto an X and Y axis. Third, you identify the correlation. Is it positive, negative, or is there honestly none at all? Fourth, you draw your line of best fit. This is just a straight line that cuts right through the center of your scattered dots, showing you the general trend. And finally, step 5, you use that line to predict the future.
Let's actually put that into practice with our commuting students. Let's say a brand new student joins the class. We have no idea what their address is, but we do know their average commute takes exactly 19 minutes. By looking at our scatter diagram of the other 30 students, we can literally just find 19 minutes on the time axis, track straight across to our drawn line of best fit, and then look straight down at the distance axis. Even with a few anomalies, that trend line lets us make a highly educated, mathematically sound estimate of exactly how far away they live. It's like magic, but it's math.
All right, let's dive into Section 4, decoding growth chart percentiles.
For our final big investigation, we're going to look at how medical professionals model human development using the CDC human growth charts for people aged 2 to 20. When doctors measure stature for age, they don't just look for one single normal height, because let's face it, human beings are incredibly diverse. Instead, they use a whole series of curves that represent percentiles. The CDC chart tracks heights across the 97th, 95th, 90th, all the way down to the 3rd percentile. So, instead of just one line of best fit, we get this sweeping set of curves showing us the full spectrum of the human population.
Now, the most prominent line, right in the dead center of this chart, is the 50th percentile. If a 10-year-old boy's height lands exactly on this curve, it just means he is the median height for his age group. To put that into perspective, out of 100 boys his exact age, 50 of them will be taller than him, and 50 will be shorter. It is the absolute critical middle ground of the entire data set.
And this brilliantly illustrates the real extremes of human variance. Look at the very top and the very bottom curves here. The 97th percentile represents the absolute tallest 3% of the population for that age. Conversely, down at the bottom, the 3rd percentile represents the shortest 3%. So if you're mapping a child's growth over several years, you just want to see them smoothly follow their respective curve, whichever one that happens to be. It's honestly a gorgeous visual representation of how an entire population is mathematically distributed.
Finally, Section 5, the true value of modeling.
We have covered a lot of ground today. We've looked at global health, retail sales, city traffic commutes, and even human biology. By mapping out all this data, we can anticipate major problems, we can stock our shelves efficiently, and we can track healthy child development. But there is a really important caveat here, and it's summarized perfectly in this quote. Mathematical models represent general trends, not absolute laws. Look, data is incredibly powerful. Scattered diagrams and percentiles allow us to make brilliant, game-changing predictions. But as we saw with that student who had the lightning-fast commute from 25 kilometers away, anomalies are always going to exist. Real life is just complex. The model is our guide. It's like a flashlight in the dark, but it is absolutely not a crystal ball of certainty.
And that brings us to the end of our investigation for today. You are now fully equipped to look at the world just a little bit differently. You know how to spot correlations, and you know how to map them out. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. If correlation doesn't guarantee absolute certainty, what other invisible trends are currently shaping your daily life? Take a look around you this week. Pay close attention to the variables. You might just find a scatter diagram hiding in plain sight. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Keep questioning the data, and I'll catch you in the next one.